Most people already know they need to change. They've told themselves 100 times, "Next time, I won't shrink myself just to keep the peace. Next time, I won't spiral just because someone gives me a cold response. Next time, I won't stay in a situation I already know is draining me." Whether that's in a relationship, a friendship, a family dynamic, or at work. You can see the pattern, you know the logic, and yet, the moment you're back in a real human interaction, the moment that familiar trigger appears, your body often moves before your mind does. It might be a slightly distant tone, an impatient look, a shift in the atmosphere, that feeling that something is about to slip out of your control. And before you've had a chance to choose differently, the old response is already happening. That's not simply a lack of awareness. It's something more specific. You haven't yet seen how that old pattern operates inside you, quietly, automatically, and faster than thought. This is why knowing better doesn't always mean doing better. Knowing is your mind recognizing the answer. But in the moments that actually matter, when you feel unsafe, dismissed, ashamed, or out of control, what takes over is often much older than the mind. An emotional system, a body memory, a relational template that was formed long before you had the language to question it. Your mind might know. Don't people please this time. Don't shut down. Don't start doubting yourself the moment someone feels distant. But the old system is faster. By the time you've thought it through, the familiar road has already pulled you back. That doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're not trying. It means you haven't yet been able to see clearly what is actually making the decision in those critical moments. When you keep repeating the same pattern, shame usually shows up very quickly. You start asking yourself, why am I doing this again? I know better. Why do I keep ending up in the same position? The one I promised myself I would never go back to. But here is what many people miss. The responses you feel so frustrated with were not always failures. They were protection. People-pleasing may have been a way to avoid conflict and preserve connection when honesty felt unsafe. Shutting down or pulling away may have been your system learning that closeness could lead to pain, so distance became the safer choice. Control may have become the only way to manage a world that felt unpredictable. None of that is random. None of it is meaningless. Those patterns protected you once. They may have helped you survive situations where you had very few other options. But this also has to be said. A pattern can have been intelligent once and still be outdated now. It made sense in the context it was built in. Back then, you may not have had the power, the support, or the emotional space to respond differently. So you adapted. You got through it. But your life has changed. The people around you may be different. Your resources, your understanding, your capacity. None of it is exactly the same anymore. The old system just hasn't received the update. It is still running on a script written years ago. The defenses that once protected you may now be the walls keeping you stuck. What helped you avoid danger back then may now be what prevents you from building healthier connection, real freedom, and a clearer way of moving through the world. This is where many people are genuinely stuck. They can see the pain, but they haven't yet seen the structure underneath it that keeps producing the same result. This is where evolutionary astrology becomes genuinely useful. When most people think of a birth chart, they think of fate. Am I just destined to struggle with money? Am I doomed to have difficult relationships? Is this simply who I am? That is not how I work with astrology. A birth chart is not a verdict. It is not there to tell you, this is your fate, and you can never move beyond it. It is more like a structural map. It helps you see why you keep entering the same pattern, whether that happens in intimate relationships, family dynamics, friendships, work, collaboration, or any situation where your sense of safety, value, or belonging is touched. It is not about giving you a simple label. It is about seeing how you became the person who responds the way you do, how your sense of safety was formed, how you learn to measure your own worth, how you defend yourself, approach others, pull back, take control, or carry disappointment, where your deepest fears and responsibilities live, and the well-worn path you could walk in your sleep, alongside the direction your soul is being asked to grow toward in this lifetime. The chart doesn't tell you who you are. It shows you how a pattern formed, where it has been protecting you, where it has been limiting you, and where it is quietly asking you not to stay the same. In astrology, people often talk about lower expressions and higher expressions of a placement. But I want to be careful with those terms, because they are often used in a way that shames people, and that is not what they are for. A lower expression does not mean you are a bad person. It does not mean something is fundamentally wrong with you. It means that energy is still operating through defense, fear, scarcity, or automatic reaction. It has not been seen clearly enough yet, so it keeps moving in the old way. A higher expression is not about becoming perfect. It is not about eliminating emotion, vulnerability, or shadow. It is not a spiritual upgrade where all your problems suddenly disappear. It means you begin to hold that energy more consciously. Instead of being driven by your reactions, you start to understand why you are being triggered. Instead of replaying the same interpersonal script, you start to notice which role you keep stepping into, and in which situations. Instead of attacking yourself for going there again, you begin to recognize it as an old protective system, doing exactly what it was built to do. That is not a label. That is seeing a pattern clearly enough that you can begin to work with it, instead of being run by it. Real change does not usually look like a sudden revelation. It does not look like becoming a completely new person overnight. It often looks like this. The trigger comes up again. You want to please, withdraw, take control, over-explain, disappear, or quietly check whether you still have a place in the situation. But this time, something is slightly different. You see it. You notice the fear of being rejected, dismissed, overlooked, or pushed out rising again. You recognize the old pattern reaching for the wheel. Maybe you can only pause for 1 second, but that second matters. Because in that second, you are no longer completely identical to the pattern. There is a small gap, enough to feel it, understand it, and choose, even slightly, a different response. That is what freedom looks like in practice. Not the absence of reaction, not perfect composure. Freedom is when the reaction rises, and you can see it without immediately becoming it. So if you keep experiencing the same kind of pain across different relationships and situations, the same exhaustion, the same walls, the same feeling of ending up somewhere you didn't mean to go, the real question is probably not just what is wrong with this particular person, relationship, or situation. The deeper question is, what position do you keep stepping into across different contexts? Why do certain dynamics trigger you so consistently? What structures in your chart keep pulling you back to the same road? And what direction is this lifetime genuinely asking you to move toward? That is why I do evolutionary astrology and relational pattern analysis. Not to hand you a label, not to tell you your fate is sealed, but to help you use this map to see yourself more clearly. Where you came from, where you are stuck right now, and where you still have room to grow. You are not incapable of change. You just need to see clearly what old pattern has been running the show.